Thank you for inviting us to speak about nature's consciousness. And it's what makes the link in between all of three. To arrive to this connection with the consciousness of nature, we need to go into deep listening. So thank you, sister, for your meditation that brought us into this state of really opening up ourselves to a deep listening journey. And through this deep listening, we begin to connect with what we could name as universal dynamics of life, universal laws. Maybe we are not all to this point of being able to contemplate some universal laws. But in a way, this is what gathers us, that what creates the flow, what creates all these synchronicities that many of the speakers have already named yesterday. This is these laws also that make us arrive into a state of communion with our brotherhood and sisterhood, and that connected us with Loïc and Magdalena to be here today. Through this listening, we have also been impregnated by some stories, and we both of the three of us wrote a book, some books. So Lydia wrote about this wisdom, multi-traditional wisdom that permeates the planet and mankind today. Nicole wrote about an intuitive narration of the fall of the sacred feminine and the rebirth of this feminine. And I wrote about my story with the same people that Loïc knows, the Yawanawa people from the Amazon, my meeting with them while I was in a business school in Paris, and how it really challenged me to enter a new vision of reality. So just to make short, before sharing the speech with my sisters, we are so happy to be here in the spiral of co-creation, and we also have sincere questioning about what technology is about, what consciousness is about, how we can awake consciousness. In the traditions, this is what I try to spread as a message. There is a very precise system of knowledge in every tradition when we go to the source of them. Why is there pain? For instance, yesterday we heard a lot about killing the pain, killing the ego. How do we kill the ego? These are very deep questioning, actually. And the traditions of wisdom may help us to understand something about that. If the mother gives birth without painkiller, she will be bonded to her child very much deeper. We know that today. So, thank you for this introduction.
Thank you, Solen. Thank you, Magdalena and Loïc. I think it's a big responsibility to be introduced as bringing the presence or a kind of the voice of Mother Earth, not one to be held lightly. And I want to pick up on this topic of listening. The earth is screaming, but we're not listening. We're not hearing. We're not hearing because we're not present. We're distracted. We're distracting ourselves. And when I say she's screaming, I've just come, I'm working on trees, I'll say more about that, on forests, on restoring ecosystems. So every day, I'm a biologist, I read the facts, right? We all read the facts. million species at risk of extinction. The Amazon rainforest is nearing a tipping point. If 15% of the forest gets degraded in addition, it will tip into a savanna, which means an ecosystem with grasslands and trees, which has a massive consequence on climatic conditions locally, globally, on food systems, on biodiversity. Tropical forests harbor 80% of the biodiversity, and we are losing them. For the past 20 years, the rate of tropical deforestation has not decreased, despite the efforts of thousands of people who are working to address this. Despite commitments, actions, it's not declining. Why? We're all hearing the facts, but we take them in with our intellect. You know, they're statistics. We're not letting it in, we're not feeling it. If we were feeling it, we would be sobbing to see what is happening today. We are disconnected from life, and this disconnection, when we go deeper, well, what is needed? We talk about consciousness, but I think it's important, we talked yesterday also about embodiment. What do we actually mean by this word? And how is that a real deep connection to life and to the life force that pulsates across all living beings? And so it's important that when we think about the metaverse or these artificial worlds, that they don't become just another distraction, moving us even further away from this connection with nature. There are studies since several decades on what's called forest bathing. You may have heard of this. Science is always catching up to what we already know intuitively, what indigenous peoples have known. And this started in Japan, where they were trying to find ways to address mental health, suicide, depression. And since then, in the last few decades, there's been a lot of studies on what is actually happening when we are in a forest. So on one hand, there are the volatile organic compounds that are released by trees that we inhale. We can study those in a laboratory setting. We can see it reduces inflammation, boosts the immune system, all sorts of effects. But what's really interesting is that the full effect only happens if you are immersed in the forest, if you're moving, if you're taking it in through all your senses. So it's not something that can be, you know, broken down into pieces, even if each individual piece still has an effect. And I think that's a really important point I wanted to bring here, which is nothing will ever replace that immersion. And yet, with this technological world, we keep making it even harder to listen, because there is so much Wi-Fi antennas. I mean, if you're sensitive to that, it becomes kind of extremely chaotic. So at a time where we most need to connect, we're making it harder and harder for ourselves. In Lima, there's an entrepreneur who gives plants to children, so that in this very urban setting, at least they can interact with a little plant that grows and have that experience. But how can we not lose that and strengthen that?
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Solen. Thank you, everyone here. So yes, the question is, how do we tune in more with our inner wisdom, of course. I'd say one of my specialty is actually to travel into the Gaiaverse. This big morphogenetic field we can call also the Akasha, which is inside, of course, programmed in our DNA, but also outside, because the outside is on your projection of what is inside. I've been trained for like more than 2 decades by medicine people in the Amazon forest, so the forest is also what connects us a lot here. We've been living with those people, and so the immense science they have, and the art, you know, of shamanism. Accessing this Gaiaverse with trance, with sound, frequencies, coded languages, communication with all life, especially the plants. And of course, we can all do this. So, you know, the state of trance we go into when we want to access this data, I use a lot of computer language, uploading, downloading data, because it's the same, like tech is like a copy of nature's technology, modern tech, I'd say. And so as soon as we access this data through trance, is also how we can extract ourselves from what I call the hypnotic trance, which is the result of patterns and traumas programmed in our DNA through generations after generations. And then in 2008, I retrieved an ancient technology called SIBA, based on programmed crystals. I traveled all over the world to retrieve this information in very different traditions, from Bhutan to South America, Egypt, and Mesopotamia, and all this ancient knowledge encoded in those crystals to give us access to very ancient archetypal key memories stuck in our DNA. And of course, it was very, very, very powerful. It's a powerful matrix, and I needed to be trained to be able to do that and go really with my body, go and decode all these ancient programmings that are patterns that we repeat and project outside. So the key, what I mean by that is that we need to be very vigilant, because of course we can have the most powerful tools in the world. If you don't do the work, if you're not vigilant, if you're not conscious and present, whatever you're going to project outside, if it can be the best tech, it needs to be used with consciousness and with love. If we don't do that, well, we cannot see the result right now in the world. So it's now time to shift, and whatever tool we use, whatever technology from nature, because now it's all available, it's all coming back on Earth, and whatever we're creating as artificial intelligence, I mean, technology created by man, needs to be aligned with those ancient technologies that have been here forever, and now we can totally be connected to that and be in action. We can just be passive, so we need to act, and there are several ways to do that. Nicole.
Yes, so, and that's also another thing you may wonder. It's, well, we all have perhaps this question, the inner work, the outer work. How do these two relate, right? How do we actually manifest the work that we're doing on our spiritual paths, or however we may want to call that journey, into the outer world? And they are one and the same, and they need to be harmonized. And so, of course, that may manifest itself in many different ways. But for me, and I work on trees, so 1 trillion trees, it's actually not a foundation, it's a platform of platforms. So we exist to connect people, to connect projects with financing, with resources, with policy, to really think about scale, right? And how do we collaborate at scale, but more importantly, how do we change the system? We're currently basing everything, and even yesterday, I mean, when we think about, entrepreneurship and kind of, can we challenge ourselves to think about new models? The current model is extractive, it's destructive. And we need to shift to a new model that is regenerative. But that actually means challenging the fundamental assumptions of everything that we do. And there is an intermediate step to get there. We won't be able to get there in one leap. So how can we already move to an entrepreneurship that is in service of life, that is shifting kind of the central focus, putting life at the center and not capital, not money, and changing to ecopreneurship, where everything we do regenerates the earth. And so this is kind of it's not an afterthought, it's not all these concepts of triple bottom line, all these things which were very good in the 20th century. We need to move beyond that. We really need to be able to look systemically, think beyond that, and as we create a new business, use that entrepreneurial drive, which is magnificent, the creativity, but really think about, what does that mean for the life force that sustain us? Are we depleting or are we regenerating? In what we create, in our intention, but also in how it operates, in the energy that we're using to power our systems, particularly when we're talking about technology. What is the sense of reciprocity with the sun, with the wind? even when we're talking about renewable technologies. And so this is really, how far can we go in this to think more systemically and to shift the fundamental building blocks, because they are not going to get us to where we need to be.
Yes, and so it's very important to go inside and really now start to heal all those ancient patterns and old paradigms that we don't need anymore. We need to transmute them, transform them, because whatever is happening on the planet now, there is a transition happening, planetary regeneration, and so we need to regenerate ourselves if we want to regenerate the planet. And it's by, doing the work. We need to do that. And by healing all these aspects of ourselves that are not aligned anymore with the process that is happening, we are going with it. Because it's happening whether we want it or not. And it will happen with us or without us. So it's a question of choice now. So what do I choose? Do I choose to go in this infinite possibilities? I mean, a world where we can create anything we want, because our creative power is like so powerful, and unfortunately we've been using it in a very limiting way, because we are limited. I mean, we think we are limited, we've been told we are limited, but we are not. So go into this inner potential, and hence all our qualities, that we can all do that now with all the tools we have, and then that's how we can totally tune in with that change and just go with the flow. Stephanie said it's just about resistance. If you resist, that's the pain is in resistance. And we just go with the flow and trust fully our goddess, mother goddess, who has this huge intelligence, this huge imagination. We just, she carries us like our beautiful children. She loves her children so much. And just go with the flow and let her, guide us into this navigation, and just participating as much as we can, and certainly not, trying to force or anything, and just accept to heal and become real divine children of our mother.
Oh, we are called to operate quantic leaps, huge movements forward, to follow what Sarah explained so well in the Gaia Codex, the precipitation of transformation, metamorphosis on the planet. So we are called for these huge leaps, and we can count on some ancestral wisdom which relates nature's consciousness and how to tap into nature's consciousness. There are all paths to be in touch with what we call Adi Shakti in yoga, which is the primal consciousness, feminine, active, dynamic consciousness in the primal materia of the planet itself. So if we want to prepare to collaborate with this path of wisdom, it's a preparation. We are not there. We have contemplated in this so precious event the gap in between all our different perspectives. It's just a beginning of sitting together and trying to listen to each other. And so if we want to collaborate with wisdom, it's a path. And so we are supporting this direction. We are calling upon your support. We are looking for institutions, academic groups of researchers, committed mind, really open to humble listening, humble sitting together so that we can understand each other. I was in the Yawanawa people once. The leader said to me, you know, I would like to bring my medicine in the hospital to heal, to cure these diseases of civilization that my sister here knows so well about. But I can't go there in the hospital because they don't respect our system of knowledge, which is a whole. Are we open to the unknown? These Yawanawa people arrived to them, and they sent me to the cemetery, and they began to speak to their dead with loud voice. And they were asking to their dead ones if I could stay, if this was politically correct, if this would bring some economic benefits. So see where they tap to have their geopolitical identity. We are so far from that. So yeah, opening ourselves to collaboration is a path of humility. And I would like to end also with this call for, like in the continuity of what my sisters have said, systemic vision, ecosystemic choice, which means that we need to be gathering many parts of our fragmented mind, which is represented in all the disciplines of knowledge we have in our society and in other peoples. And we need to be ready for radical changes in terms of ethics, in terms of values, in terms of how we give birth, how we die. Loic said, what will you bring with you when you will die? So how will we die? In terms also of how we feed ourselves, Magdalena said, yes, what do we need to be really fed finally? This is also very deep questions, my brothers and sisters. We can be fed by pure energy, you know, so at this point we would be much more lighter for our planet. So let us keep preparing ourselves. Let us gather, let us exchange and melt and build up together new alliances to support the sovereignty of the planet, of life, of realms, of people for sure, but also of plants and animals. Let us prepare ourselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you.